Welcome back, students of Conversation 2. This is our last lecture. As I noted in class, we were busy with presentations, so it was difficult to talk about the final 4 chapters. Today I'm going to briefly go over the topics that you're expected to address in the final exam. Most of you are from the Asia Business Department. Some of you are from other majors. But I want to emphasize again that the presentations were very well done. Public speaking is very stressful, and some people are good at it, some people are not. I like to think I am, and clearly some of you have some ability also. You're speaking in your second or maybe third language, and the presentations were quite good. Very engaging and interesting topics. The way that you delivered the information was good. So yeah, you can be proud of yourselves. As I explained, the grades are quite close. There are some students who have slacked off in attendance or in submitting homework or other things, which probably is going to cost those students in the end. But you have one last chance, to do your best, and 30% of your final grade will be based on your final interview with me. The spreadsheet with the schedule is on the cyber campus for you to look at whenever, if you're not sure what time you're supposed to come to my office. Room 436, remember, is it's just around the corner from the stairs that we use to get up to our classroom. So, without further ado, 1 question from the first 6 chapters and 2 questions from the last 4. So, just to remind you, these topics are very general, but I made suggestions throughout the term about how you might answer them. And just because the topic is general doesn't mean your answer should be general. Remember, part of the class is being specific and providing details. Okay? It's also a skill to be able to be concise but specific at the same time when you only have 2 minutes to answer a question. So it's a different ability than standing in front of the classroom and speaking for 5 or 6 minutes, as you all know. So the first chapter, to get into the topics themselves, the first chapter, it was about languages, and I said the rule was choose a language that you think is interesting and tell me why you think that language is interesting. You're not allowed to choose your first language, whatever that is, Uzbek or Bengali or English or Korean or Vietnamese. There's people from various countries in our class. You can't choose those languages. You have to choose another language, not English or your first language, and explain why that language is attractive to you and why you'd like to learn it. That's it. Fashion was the second one. We talked about trends, fashion trends, and we talked about environmental issues that might be connected to people, wearing, consuming, making clothing. It's one of the industries. There are many industries that cause damage, of course, to our environment, but this consumption of clothes when you don't really need necessarily to have it, just because you want it doesn't mean it's good, to put all the energy and spend all of that, produce all that pollution, just so that you can have a new shirt or another pair of pants or shoes. So whatever way you want to explain it, you can talk about how you like shopping for clothes, or you can talk about styles, or you can talk about the industry, like I said, in an environmental way, or you can talk about it in a business sense. Your choice, okay? Life lessons. That one was obviously all of you are quite a bit younger than me. You're in your early 20s, so you have to think of something that's happened in your life, something that you learned. It could have been an accident that taught you something. It could be a teacher. It could be an experience, right? A positive experience. It could be a person. Something that you read from a book, some advice. It doesn't really matter, as long as you can explain how this, whatever it is you decide, influenced you and how it relates to your life and your choices. That one was pretty open-ended as well. Number 4 was stories, and in the book they give examples of fables and myths, fairy tales. Any of those are okay. Obviously, you have to be able to summarize the story in only a couple minutes. That's the challenge for number 4, is to be able to give me a certain level of detail, but also to, give me enough information that I can understand the important things of the story. Often at the end of the story, there is some sort of moral, right? Some sort of lesson at the end. You're supposed to take away something from the story. That's often the purpose of a fable or a tale. That's old, is that it teaches you something and you're supposed to, grasp that main idea. So make sure that that's included in your explanation as well. Number 5 is a home. That's pretty simple. You just have to describe a place that you lived and why you felt attached to that home, or perhaps it wasn't good. I can't recall exactly what example we used in class, or that I used, but you've probably lived various places. One of those places is Korea, and another place might be your hometown, wherever that is, in Korea or in another country. And just remember, I'm not really looking for, the objects that are in, your room or something like that. I'm more looking for like the things that are related to your life, in a bigger sense, like the things that affect your lifestyle living there, right? So like maybe you had noisy neighbors, or maybe the place you lived was really small or really big, or it was an apartment, or it was a detached home, whatever place it may be, a single room, or it might be a multi-story house, whatever that is. Those are the things. It's close to a school, it's far, it's in a busy place, or it's in the countryside. These are the things that you need to think about, the atmosphere and the neighborhood, where that home is located. And of course, like I said, whether you had a positive experience or a negative one, that's the way it goes. Some people get to live in their dream house. That I think that's pretty rare. If you have a decent house, you probably, if you've lived in other places that were not quite as good, then you're probably thankful. When I first came to Korea, I lived in what Koreans call an opistel. I think that's my Korean pronunciation. An opistel is just usually a single room. It can be more than one room, but in my case, it was a studio apartment. It was about the same size as my office, which is shocking that a person can live in a place that small. But when I went to Tokyo, Yokohama, actually, to visit my brother, when he was teaching in Japan, his room was even smaller than mine, so but cleaner. Anyway, there was just basic furnishings were there. Like I didn't have my own. That the bed was in the room already. It was a furnished, so that was kind of nice. But of course, the bed wasn't brand new, and somebody else had used it before, and the refrigerator wasn't new. Nothing was new. There was a TV and stuff, basic things. And the best thing about that place was it was part of my contract, so I didn't have to pay rent. So once you're out of that situation and you do have to pay rent, because I lived in Korea for 5 years before I got married, and paying rent is a big expense. And not paying rent for 5 years was great. I realize now, because I pay a mortgage, I own my house, but I have to pay a lot of money every month to the bank. But when I came to Korea, I didn't. And that, even though that home was small, I don't want to go back and live there. I'd rather pay monthly rent or mortgage. But I'm just saying, for that point in my life when I was living by myself, having a really small room like that was cheap was very important, because it allowed me to save money. And at that point, you know, if I had to do it again, I probably would do it again. I'd probably live in that tiny little room for 3 years, almost 2.5 years, and save money so that I could pay back my debt to the bank in Canada. That's I borrowed money when I was in university. So these are the kind of things. I've already gone over a couple minutes just by explaining some aspects of my experience. So just keep it limited to you know, major features of the home that are important to your life. Charity is the last one. Not hard to figure out what to say in this one. Either you have some volunteer experience, or you've made some donations, or you haven't. If you haven't, then you have to tell me what you would like to do. If you have an actual plan to do something, then that's great. Or if you just have an idea, or you're interested in a certain charity, foundation, organization, or you just want to do something yourself. You want to just offer yourself through your own personal effort and organization, organizing skills rather, not organization, then that's fine. You can talk about that, okay? You may have had some experience from school, public school sometimes. You know, the school organizes some activities that are volunteer work. I've done many things, and I give an example in class about the experience I had at the Welcome House, which was a small church, and I volunteered every Wednesday to help inner city kids. And there was that incident with the basketball and the knife, right? Probably you remember me telling you that in class, but it doesn't have to be that dramatic. Obviously, that was a pretty intense experience. Volunteering's sometimes, you know, when you're doing volunteering, sometimes people are in rough shape, and you know, sometimes it's a little bit dangerous to do volunteer work. Obviously, if there's some war or conflict or violence happening and you go to help, then you are accepting some risk. But it doesn't have to be like that. It can just be a very simple thing. Like when I was in elementary school, I remember our science teachers, we went on a field trip, kind of. It was just, we lived in the countryside, so we just walked out of the town, up the river. There was a river that ran through our town called Big Head River, and we just followed the river, and they explained, you know, about the trees and the plants and the river and the geography and all that kind of stuff, biology, geography. And as we went, we picked up garbage. So we walked, you know, like, I don't know, probably 10 or 15 kilometers, you know, probably 7 or 8 kilometers out up the river and then back to the school, which took 2 or 3 hours. And while they were teaching us about nature, we also cleaned up the ground on either side of the river, which is kind of volunteer work. They never categorized it as that, but that's what we did, and it was good because there was lots of trash beside the river, and once 100 kids walked by picking it all up, it was clean. So that's what we call 1 + 1 in Korea, I think. All right, so those are the first 6. I'm going to ask you one of those, and then we have 4 new ones. The first one I believe we did discuss, but it's about how to stay healthy, and there are basically 2 aspects that you can deal with. Like there's more components than just 2, but basically you can talk about mental health, or you can talk about physical health, and of course these things are related. We say, and from the Roman expression or Greek expression, a sound mind lives in a sound body, right? Sound mind lives in a sound body. And that doesn't mean, it doesn't have anything to do with the sound, like hearing, listening, noise. That's this meaning of sound is strong, like stable. So a sound body is a strong body, and a sound mind, of course, is dependable, stable, strong as well. So you can talk about one or both aspects. You can talk about health systems if you like, but you can talk about your own health, or you can talk about doctors or nurses or hospitals, or obviously a lot of people might choose to talk about coronavirus. It's your choice what aspect of health you want to emphasize. Next, chapter 8 is about space. Now this one, I'm sad that we didn't talk about this because we've had some good discussions this class. The American Dream debate after Akamel's presentation was a good example of all of you giving your opinion and considering, what things are important. And some of the presentations were sort of motivational speeches, trying to give people advice on how to think about things. So this one isn't so much a perspective as just like considering how we, what existence is like for human beings. Are there aliens? Do you believe in aliens? Do you think space technology is important? Do we need to spend, trillions of dollars in technology and equipment to get to space? Is space dangerous? Are we going to start a war? As we expand into space, are powerful countries going to start using weapons in space and fighting? It really doesn't matter. You can talk about, if you're interested in space since you were young, like me. I'm just fascinated by supernovas, black holes, solar systems. I know all the planets and their characteristics, and I know some of the moons as well that orbit around the planets Jupiter. We have our own moon, but Jupiter and Saturn have many moons. And just finding out all the different things that exist in space, all the different elements and materials and characteristics of stars and planets. I think that's basically interesting. But you choose whatever thing about space you think is important. If you want to talk about spending money on space or effort, rather than, for example, how much could we support our people on Earth if we weren't so focused on exploring and testing and developing space technology? We could use that money for other things. Of course we could. One of the reasons Barack Obama shut down the space, not the space program, not NASA as a whole, but stopped doing the shuttles, right? If you remember those shuttles that went up to outer space, they were enormously expensive. And when I was young, there was an accident, I believe it was 1986, that the Challenger shuttle exploded. And of course, the astronauts were instantly killed. And, the damage, the expense of human lives and resources was enormous. So they made a decision to stop that. And now, this space transportation and exploration has continued with SpaceX and Elon Musk taking over that role. And his rockets are a lot cheaper, but still ridiculously expensive. So anyway, talk about whatever aspect of space you want to talk about. You can even talk about what space is going to be like in the future, Mars missions and that kind of stuff. Whatever you like, as long as it's related to space. Chapter 9, I want to make clear, it's one of those ambiguous ones. Spending time, basically, you can talk about time management here, right? How to use your time well. Or you can just talk about how you do use your time, playing games, watching YouTube, watching Netflix, whatever it is. Do you waste time? Are you using your time well? That's what time management means. Or are you have too much time? This is not a problem for me. I almost never have to wait for things because my schedule is so tight. But occasionally, I'll just have 15 minutes until my next class. What am I going to do for the next 15 minutes? Am I going to, prepare my lesson, or I'm already prepared? Am I going to, do some homework or do some research? Probably not for 15 minutes. I just have 15 minutes to kill, right? And how am I going to kill it? Probably just mindlessly, browse the internet. That's my default. If I have a break between classes or some time before class, that's pretty much what I end up doing. It's just looking on Google for something, go to Wikipedia or check some short videos on YouTube or whatever, because the 15 minutes isn't really long enough to do much. So in that case, you might be trying to just do something to fill out the space, and that's called killing time. So whatever, you want to talk about how to manage your time better, or you want to say how you use your time, or if you want to talk about something that you like to do, right? Something that you don't think it's wasteful or killing time, it's you're using it, you're spending the time the way you want. If there's something you have as a hobby, and that's whenever you have free time, that's how you use it, then talk about how you use your free time. Okay? Whichever aspect of time you want to talk about, that's up to you. Last, Adventure Time, which is a funny show that I used to watch, but I haven't recently. But adventures in the textbook, they talk about famous explorers, especially like Marco Polo and Dr. Livingstone, Ferdinand Magellan. So you can talk about a person like that. You can talk about somebody who discovered something. Even, when it comes to space, sometimes I say to students, sometimes you can overlap these topics. I don't really have time to strategize with you, but I probably should have mentioned at some point, when you go in to an interview, sometimes, you can't prepare for every question. So sometimes these topics can overlap. Like if I want to talk about an adventure and I want to talk about space at the same time, maybe I'm going to choose Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins. There were 3 of them, by the way. People usually forget about Buzz and Michael, but Neil Armstrong's the one who stepped on the moon first and said, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," and planted the, American flag for the picture. But that's an adventure, certainly, and it covers both. It's space and adventure time. I mentioned that also. When I tell this story, I like to tell the story in a different way, because everybody always emphasizes Neil Armstrong, but Michael Collins was the senior astronaut, the most experienced expert in the group of 3. So actually, when they did the moon landing and they dropped the capsule, basically Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong, they went on the surface of the moon and did their moonwalk, because Michael Collins had to stay in the ship because he was the best astronaut. So he didn't get any of the attention, but he was the one who was responsible for flying the module around the moon and picking them up. So while they were doing their moonwalk and taking pictures and stuff and broadcasting and becoming super famous, he had to go to the dark side of the moon, fly around and make sure he picked them up, because if he didn't time it perfectly and he missed, they were going to be stuck on the moon forever. So, whose job is most important here? The guy who's posing for the camera with the American flag, or the pilot who has to fly the module around the backside of the moon, make sure he picks them up and brings them home so they live to tell all the stories? That was Michael Collins. And I hope I have his name right, because nobody usually talks about him, but except me. But that's there. I talked about an adventure and I talked about space at the same time. Two birds with one stone. But you can talk about an adventure that you've had, right? That you've done yourself. Maybe you've gone, I don't know, maybe you've gone scuba diving, or maybe you've explored caves in the jungle, or you went to a different country, you did something exciting. But just remember, it has to be an adventure. There has to be action, there has to be excitement, and there should be some element of danger, right? The moon landing definitely was dangerous. They could easily have made a mistake and died. So that's part of the adventure. The excitement is also related to potential danger. That's why you're in caves, you could fall down, or the ceiling could collapse, or some bats could attack you, or you could fall down in the darkness or get lost. There's that's part of something being an adventure as well. The explorers, Magellan did die in the Philippines when he was going around the world. Dr. Livingston eventually did die in Africa when he was deep in the jungle, separated from other human beings other than the tribes of people that lived deep in the jungle, who he decided to live with. And Marco Polo, he made it back to Italy, but he was stuck in East Asia, in China, in the court of Kublai Khan for like 20 years before he finally made it back to Italy to tell his famous story. That's how we always talk about Marco Polo, because he was an Italian explorer who successfully made it all the way to Asia and then came back and wrote about his experiences, his adventures, and this sparked the interest in Europe for traveling and connecting with Asia. So there you go. Those are the 10. I think that's a good enough explanation, and hopefully you do well. But as I said to you before, tomorrow is a holiday. This Friday, the first round of students does their interview, and if you give me your submit a file, then I can give you a breakdown of what your score was. You all have your scores for midterms, but not the breakdown. But as I said before, it's more important to just focus on being confident, relaxed, organized, giving complete answers with detail, and not thinking about, oh, my pronunciation needs improvement, or my grammar needs improvement. Just as a whole, focus on improving how your answer is delivered. And that's how you practice, right? You don't need to just repeat every word so your pronunciation is better. You need to just practice your entire answer and see if it's 2 minutes long and if it's easy and comfortable to say. And that's what you need to do when you're getting ready for the interview. And so good luck to everybody, and I'll see you either this Friday, the 10th, or the 17th. Good luck, and good luck on all your exams, including ours, and I will see you for your interview in my office on Friday. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon. Oh, my button doesn't work.